All right. Welcome back, everyone. Hope you had a good lunch and are doing some good networking and conversations, and hope you enjoyed our 11 a.m. sessions in the morning. So glad to see you back this afternoon. For those of you just joining us, welcome. My name is Monica Cruz, and I serve as the State Data Center Lead for the Texas Demographic Center. And welcome to the Texas Demographic Conference, our annual conference. So this is an afternoon plenary, and I want to welcome everyone here and everyone online joining us. So our plenary this afternoon is going to be focused on understanding growth in Central Texas, data, trends, and local perspectives. And I'll just read the description here briefly. Central Texas's continued growth is experienced differently across communities and roles. In this plenary panel, leaders from local government and regional organizations bring distinct perspectives on how they use data to understand population trends, plan for infrastructure and services, and respond to emerging issues, offering a multifaceted view of the region's evolving landscape. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Kara Joyner, who will be introducing our distinguished panelists.
Great. Thanks so much for organizing this, Monica. Let's give her a hand for all this work. I don't know if Ann Starr's still in here. I thank her too. But anyhow, so first I'm going to introduce the speakers. So first, Ishmael, the mayor of Bastrop. Ishmael is a fifth-generation Bastropian and the first Black mayor of Bastrop, bringing deep local roots, infrastructure expertise, and a lifelong commitment to community service to his leadership. Before being elected mayor in 2025, he served nearly 6 years on Bastrop's Planning and Zoning Commission, including as chair, and built more than a 20-year career with Austin Water, specializing in advanced wastewater treatment and municipal infrastructure. Harris is also a longtime youth mentor and proud advocate for the cowboy tradition, strong partnerships, and thoughtful growth that continue to shape Bastrop's future. We also have Kaileen McHugh. She's the Planning and Economic Development Coordinator of CAPCOG. And so that's the Capital Area Council of Governments, where she supports regional economic development initiatives, demographic and economic data analysis, and strategic planning efforts across Central Texas. Prior to joining CAPCOG, Kaileen worked with a nonprofit on community engagement and housing research projects, and served as an AmeriCorps Vista in Indianapolis supporting small business programs. Kaileen holds a master's degree in community and regional planning from the University of Texas at Austin and a bachelor's degree in economics from Florida State University. And then finally we have Lila Valencia, the city demographer of Austin. There's only like very few city demographers in the US. Maybe you're like the only one. In Texas. So she leads the demographics and data team at Austin Planning, where she produces population estimates, projections, and demographic analysis to support the decision-making of city leadership and demographic staff, local businesses and organizations, and the community at large. Lila's an applied demographer with over 15 years of experience. Before her role at the city, she was a senior demographer at the Texas Demographic Center, where she managed product development and led the 2020 census coordination efforts. She holds a PhD in applied demography from the University of Texas at San Antonio, a master's degree from the College of William and Mary in Virginia, and a bachelor's degree from the University of Texas at Austin. So we're so glad to have the three of you here today. And first, I just want you to briefly describe your role and your positions, and we'll start with you.
Hi, everyone. As mentioned, I'm Kaileen McHugh. I'm with the Capital Area Council of Governments, CAPCOG. We serve a 10-county region across Central Texas here. So we have Williamson, Travis, Hayes counties along the 35 corridor with Austin right in the center. And we go out west towards Llano County, so Llano, Blanco, and Burnett. And then we also go east towards Fayette County, Lee County, Bastrop, and Hayes. Surprised I remembered all 10. But yeah, we serve a mix of 5 urban, 5 rural counties, obviously a lot of suburban counties as well, or suburban areas as well. And my role is the Economic Development and Planning Coordinator. So I mostly work on economic development. I help our communities, our local governments, such as cities and counties, apply to grants, get the data they need, and also serve as a collaborator, so bringing folks together on various topics that arise, challenges across communities. Oh, you got one.
All right. Good morning, everyone, or afternoon, sorry. As it was stated, I'm Ishmael Harris. I am the mayor of Bastrop. I just got recently, like a few weeks ago, reelected for a full 3-year term. So I'm really excited about what we have going on in Bastrop. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I had an opportunity last year to run for mayor after our previous mayor resigned 2 years into his term. And so it was jumping in the deep end of the pool, if you will, and learning how to swim. So just kind of my role, if you know anyone what the mayor duties are. But I'm real big on advocating and being an ambassador for Bastrop. We have a lot going on in that community. We're experiencing a rapid growth. Just because we're in proximity to Austin, and also just the opportunities of land in Bastrop has caused a lot of people to come down there. And so I also serve on the EDC. So I'm, like to look at opportunities to present or to bring different entities or organizations, housing, job, workforce, things like that to our community, because as I said, we're growing a lot. And I'll probably touch on these things later, but with the growth, we're experiencing a different amount of people that are coming in, a different variety from different walks of life. And so it's imperative that we are able to not only take care of the people who've been established there, the locals, the original people, but also those who are transplanting into Bastrop to make sure that we're a thriving community. As she said, she recruits people to come in on this, and so she reached out and got me involved. So I appreciate that as well. But I'm just really looking forward to talking about Bastrop, what we're doing, how we're trying to move forward, and learning some things as well.
Thank you. So I'm Lila Valencia, and I'm the demographer at the city of Austin, the 12th largest city in the country, and one of 12 cities that now has 1 million in population, or over 1 million. And so my job is to work with a great team of folks at the Austin Planning Division, at Austin Planning with the Demographics and Data Division at the city of Austin. And what we do is we support the work of city staff who are busy providing services and trying to plan for the future. And we provide them with demographic analysis, population projections. And we also support the work of the policymakers at the city, really, provide information that can help to drive their policies, but also ground it in data and evidence, right? And then we are really out there to share this demographic information with anybody who's interested in it. And so we get called on, by folks who are in Rotary clubs, chambers of commerce, different nonprofit groups, really whoever wants to know about Austin demographics, we'll go and we'll talk to them about it, because it's really a passion of ours to put data in the hands of people who are actually going to use the data and put it to work. So that's a little bit about what I do at the city with our team.
Great. So a few of you have already talked about growth, but I'm wondering if you can tell me what growth looks like to you. Like, what do you think of growth, and in your areas, what's driving it?
So across the region, the 10-county region, it varies. We have our more urban counties. So we have, Travis County experiencing a lot of growth, Williamson, Hayes, Bastrop, Caldwell experiencing a lot of growth. We also had some of our western counties experiencing a lot of growth, especially during the pandemic. People wanted to be in more rural areas, so we had a lot of people go out to Llano, to Blanco, even to Burnett. And some of our communities aren't experiencing as much growth. So we have, those suburban counties and the or suburban communities in the counties I listed, but then we serve Fayette County as well. Fayette County is expected or projected to lose population by 2050, 2060, and they've seen their population, steady across the past decade or so. So it varies widely within our region. I think, the MSA drives a lot of the growth to the MSA and also on the outskirts. But then, as we get more rural population, is perhaps expected to steady or decline.
All right. Well, growth, as I stated, Bastrop is growing. One of the fastest growing small communities in the state of Texas. And a lot of it has to do with what's going on in Austin, but a whole lot has to do with the fact that Elon Musk has Twitter, SpaceX, and the bodega. The boring company. I said the bodega because we have a lot of events out there, but he has the boring company out there. And SpaceX just expanded their facility. They just added 1 million square feet to their warehouse, and they're actually going to be building more space out there. And so with that comes a lot of jobs, a lot of recruitment, a lot of people wanting to move to Bastrop. We're experiencing a 4%, or we're projecting a 4% growth per year for the next 6 years. We're unofficially around 18,000 people in the city limits. I really got involved in Bastrop just in the political side or working in the community, in the government side in 2019. And we had maybe about 9,000 people in the city limits. By, the next 6 years, we jumped up 6,000 people. Right. And so that just shows the growth that's going on in Bastrop. And as we prepare for it, we really have to look at what is it going to do for our community. We have a lot of older citizens that have lived there and still will be there. It's a nice retirement spot, but we also have families that are coming in as we start having these larger companies come around. What goes on here in Austin affects Bastrop. A lot of people, when they move to this area or areas like this, they don't generally want to come necessarily live in the city. They want to live on the outskirts a little bit. And so just to be able to have where it's not such a fast-paced life, and you're able to have a little bit smaller, closer-knit community. And so as that starts to happen, more jobs increase here, more jobs in the area. We just really have to get ourselves prepared. We have to be on top of the housing concerns and needs, as well as the jobs. Anybody that knows, a lot of jobs affect the communities. And so if we don't have the jobs that are going to help out the people and the family that are coming in, then we'll find ourselves in a bad position. As more people come into the community, we have to know that we have to have a different variety of jobs, not just the basic jobs that worked for our times before. And so as growth happens, those are the things that we're preparing for. Healthcare is big with growth, and so taking care of that is important in our community as well, because there's a lot of people that as I said, the population is increasing, and as it increases, the traffic increases between here and Bastrop, right? I'm not sure if any of y'all take that 71 corridor, but I take it on a daily basis. I've taken it for over 20 years, and I've watched it grow, the amount of people. And what used to take 25, maybe 30 minutes now can take an hour, just depending, or even longer if something happens. So monitoring what's on the outside as well as what's happening in the inside is very important. And, events like this are help us get ahead of that.
So in Austin, growth it looks a little bit different than it used to look in the past. We have been, one of the among large cities that we're leading in terms of growth, and this is something that we're seeing across the country and in Texas. So for any of you who were in attendance at Helen's, Dr. Yu's presentation earlier today, the state of Texas, she was talking a lot about how it's really those suburban rings that are really driving growth now, that are seeing the faster growth growth, and also in terms of Central Texas, those larger numeric gains. And so in Austin, we're now adapting to somewhat slower growth, but we continue to grow, which is unique. Not all large cities across the country are actually growing. We still remain one of the fastest large cities that are continuing to grow and that are growing the fastest. Our growth has come with many challenges, and some of those challenges we're seeing sort of impact our rate of growth now, right? And so as the mayor was talking about, many families move from the area of Austin into surrounding areas, and so that means that growth that Austin could have had and maintained didn't stay there, right? It went elsewhere to grow their families and maybe even to age, right? And so we're seeing sort of a slower rate of growth that's a little bit divergent from what we're seeing in the region. The Austin metro region is the second fastest growing region in the country, and it has been among the fastest growing regions in the country for 15 years and going. And so that means that even though Austin's rate of growth is a little bit slower today, we have to maintain sort of an awareness of what's happening in the rest of the city or in the rest of the region, because a lot of the people who come to those surrounding counties still work in Austin. And so that really has implications for our transportation systems, our transit, and then just regional sort of partnerships that really make sure that the people who are working here also are having good quality of life wherever they are throughout the region.
Great. Let's hoping that's your mic. Can you say something about housing? Because you're saying people are moving in, and I'm wondering, as mayor, what you can do in terms of housing and zoning and.
Sure. Well, when it comes to housing, it's just working with the different housing group, the Housing Authority, Home Builders Association, things like that. You don't have the traditional type of living requirements that we used to have from the people who grew up or from Bastrop originally. You have the different lifestyles because people are coming from the city, so they're used to condos or, 1 or 2 bedroom apartments. And of course, those are everywhere, but there's different styles that come with it. A lot of people they came from places that don't have yards. In Bastrop, we're big about yards, but we're also big about, what works for you within the confines of our codes. We recently just revamped our codes. We had the B3 code, and it really didn't work out for us in Bastrop. It was more urban than anything, and that's not, what we were looking to represent. And so it wasn't it was a short-lived code, kicked off in 2019, but we just revamped it, redid it, and changed it up. And so what we have going on now more fits what we have coming into Bastrop as far as commercial, retail, single family, multifamily. We've had those in different areas in the city to where aesthetically it works for the citizens and in the neighborhoods with schools or without schools or close to retail or in the workforce area.
Yeah, so in terms of the growth, I'm wondering what systems are most at stress in your areas in terms of, healthcare, water, schools, what's, top priority and, most dire. Yeah.
I mean, I'd say all of the above. Of course, it looks different for each community. Something that we had did for our comprehensive economic development strategy, that's something that we managed for the 10-county region. And we had gone out to each county and did a mini SWOT analysis, so strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. And it's interesting how, all of these topics came up in each county, even though they're so different. So transportation challenges, that comes up in the more urban areas in terms of congestion. And there's also some more rural areas that are also experiencing things like congestion, although it doesn't look like 35, but maybe they have new developments, whether it's housing or, economic development projects that are increasing traffic on roads that might not necessarily see that much traffic. So the residents aren't used to it. So transportation's a big one. We talked about housing, whether it be affordability or availability. That comes up as a challenge in every county in terms of, as population's growing. And, healthcare and schools I'm not as familiar with, but I know that's a challenge that comes up with population growth and something that was mentioned in each of these workshops. Water and utilities, definitely, I'd say, infrastructure is in the top concerns when it comes to population growth, especially for smaller communities and more communities on the outskirts of Austin that are experiencing this, significant growth. Places such as Hutto, Jarrell, and Williamson County, smaller communities in Hayes County, they're all experiencing this, huge influx, 200% increase in population in the past 5 years, 10 years. And what does that do to their water systems, sewage systems, and whatnot? And they have to get that up to speed, and it takes, a lot of money, and it takes a lot of manpower to do so. So yeah, there's a lot of challenges across the region.
So I'm going to repeat and say all of the above. All right. I think we're going to beat this dead horse, but that's okay because people need to know what's going on. We'll start with transportation. As I mentioned, and as was said earlier, there's a lot of people that they commute to Austin, right, for work. And so in that commute, the more people move here, the more congestion it is on 71. And so that causes a lot of frustration. But also with that population, it increases what we have going on in our small community of Bastrop. It takes me 5 minutes longer now to get to City Hall than it did a year ago, just the amount of people. When school lets out, it's a big congestion around town. And so, it's not like 35. It maybe not be like, it's not like downtown, but at the same time, when you're used to moving around pretty smoothly and get to somewhere in a short distance of time in the city, it becomes a headache. It becomes a hassle, right? With that, you get people who have different driving rules, if you will, right? Everyone doesn't drive the same in every part. And so now you have to deal with folks. We're used to waving people along, saying, hey, how you doing? Go ahead. And that doesn't happen all too often, right? So that's a big factor. When it comes to the schools, a few years back, we passed some bonds to really help out the schools and add to our schools. And so we've added an additional middle school in the city limits and an additional middle school out in Cedar Creek, which is in Bastrop County. And we have elementaries that we've added as well because the growth is there and the need is there. And so, and education is number one, right? People won't come into your community or they won't stay. They'll come and they'll leave if you don't have a good education system for their family. So it's important that we make sure that we're on top of that and getting things prepared. And even in the schools, having multiple programs that work for kids. Yes, I'm a big sports guy. And I know sports are good, but also I understand that we're in a tech-driven industry. And so not every kid is growing up with a ball in their hand. They're growing up with a device in their face, and they're learning how to navigate through that. And so it's important that in our school systems, we face those challenges. We face those challenges dead on and provide opportunities for not just the athletes, but the computer kids as well. And with the families coming in, we have wastewater issues, or not. We don't have issues. We're getting on top of those, but those are the concerns, right? Because more people come in, there's more of a demand for usage of water, and then there's also what do we do with that water? We're looking at some modern technology and in a reuse system to where we'll be able to reuse our treated water, and actually we're going to start treating it in a different way using electrolysis, and so with the company called Water. And so we'll be able to eventually sell that reuse to people who need it in the community. That way we're keeping it right here. But, If everything works out, we're working through negotiations, but SpaceX, they'll be tying into our treatment system. And so that's going to be helping us out. That's going to add, to our system, and we're going to get those benefits from them for using our system. But with everyone, a lot of people don't realize how important wastewater is. And I've spent 20 years in there. I like to tell people, you can have a problem with your water. That's great. But not really, right? But you can tell people, go to the store, buy water, boil your water, this and the other. You can't tell anybody to stop flushing the toilet. You can't tell anybody to stop putting things down the sink. And so it's important that, we're ahead of the game and we build for capacity for the growth that's coming. When it comes to healthcare, I'm a big proponent of getting us a regional hospital. There's a lot of people who come into Bastrop and rely on the city of Bastrop for our resources. We're the county seat, and so a lot of people come and shop. They have family, they have friends, and we get about 200,000 people a month that come into Bastrop. And this is from multiple counties. Kaileen can tell you how many counties are surrounded and smaller communities that are surrounded that rely on us. So being able to have something like a regional hospital, a medical mall right there in Bastrop, it'll supply and take care of an entire region that doesn't have to worry about coming into Austin. To go back to that Highway 71 thing, I went into work a little later than normal one day, and there was an accident, and what normally takes me 25, 30 minutes to get to work took me an hour and 45 minutes to get down 71 because it was an accident. No one's life needs to be in jeopardy like that. If something is going on, we need to be able to have something to where we can supply and take care of those needs in our community. Oh, and one more thing, I'm sorry if I'm talking too long, but like on housing, just really going back to that, not only affordable living, but attainable housing, right? Because in these areas, you don't have everyone that makes the same kind of job, but they have a lot of the same kind of goals, same work ethic. So being able to get someone an attainable house that works for them is big for our growth.
Well, I think, your last point kind of touches on what I'd like to share. I think I'm thinking of Austin sort of as the big sister that's sort of seen that really rapid growth and how we're now really dealing with some of those growing pains and those challenges, right? And so, between 2010 and 2020, Austin added an unprecedented number of housing units. But we were adding those units at a little bit of a slower rate than we had been in the past, and we were adding them at a rate that was slower than our household formation. So those housing units were being built and they were being occupied right away. And so when the pandemic came, we'd really put really heavy pressures on the housing market, and home prices shot up. I know I'm probably talking to a lot of area residents, and so I don't have to go into what that was like for so many people, but it also meant that a lot of people couldn't afford to stay any longer in Austin. And so they went to many places like Bastrop. And so to me, I think what I'd like to share is that I think, sort of being a harbinger of, what's to come, it's like, for cities that are around Austin, it's going to become really important that they're planning for that really rapid growth that they're seeing coming from the city. But I think for places like Austin that are seeing that rapid growth, we also have to consider what it is that we're building. So we were building so many units, right? But if those units aren't exactly meeting the needs of the people who live in the area, then the population starts to match what we're building, right? So today, Austin is a majority renter city. It's also a majority non-family city. And so depending on what gets built out in these surrounding areas, we could see similar demographic change and demographic composition there, where the age structure changes and the characteristics of the communities can change. Another thing that we saw in Austin is that we had an actual decline in the number of African American and Hispanic children. We also have fewer households with children where the householders are African American and the householders are Hispanic. So it's not just a fertility issue like Helen was talking about earlier, but it's also an issue of displacement. And so when the surrounding cities are seeing this rapid growth, I hope that they can look to Austin as sort of an example of what can happen if there's not enough guardrails in place for to maintain that growth or to manage that growth, right? So making sure that there are plenty of housing options available for newcomers and jobs available for newcomers, but also a way for the communities that are already there to be able to stay in place if that's what they're they're hoping to do.
Thanks. It actually gets into that next question about who wins out of this migration stuff. And so I don't know if the two of you can elaborate on that too, and also just some of the guardrails that are being put down.
Sorry, what was the question?
Oh, these changes, people migrate here to these ex-verbs or whatever because they're going to benefit a nice new house. It's like the new American dream, but I'm wondering who loses out, from the existing community, who's displaced, and what kind of guardrails are you putting up to protect what's unique about your communities?
Go ahead.
I mean, I would say in terms of who benefits across the region, we have a lot of, in terms of who benefits from the growth, we have a lot of these suburban communities benefiting. Lila spoke about the city of Austin, what it looks like there, and can probably speak a little bit more on that. And I'd say,
You want me to jump in and you come in behind me?
yeah, I need to think for a minute.
Yeah, no worries. So, who we have to be mindful for is our older population in Bastrop. Like I said, there's a lot of seniors that are there. A lot of people come to reside there. People have been there for generations. And, when it comes to seniors, they're on a fixed income, right? And so we have to be mindful in the growth that comes to make sure that they don't get housed out. They don't get they can't get their help, their resources, and because they're the patriarchs of our community. We have the Del Webb that just established themselves down there. That's 55 and older population, and so that added on to what we have, along with new families. And with the new families, one of the biggest things I think people forget about a lot of times is childcare. Right? When families come in, they need somewhere to do or somewhere to have their kids while they go to work. And it's a big factor in which leads to going back to job opportunities, because to me, my end goal is for Bastrop to be a self-sustaining community, right? Nothing around with the people around, nothing against Austin or anything like that. But we're in a prime opportunity again to support the smaller rural communities. So many people come there, and so to be able to provide that, it helps uplift those other communities. If people have to live there, but they can't afford to work there, or if they can't afford to live because of the work that is there and they have to travel, well, a lot of times, depending on hitting the highway, you might have to put your children in a childcare here, or hopefully your job has one up here in Austin. So having that down there in Bastrop is really, really huge to be able to do. It's a big barrier that people just, don't realize. And then just jobs in general. Again, to go back to people, different walks of life, different beliefs, different career opportunities or job skills, that also follows down to the next generation. So having those jobs and those opportunities set up, trade schools, programs where we have different workforces that involved in the school to get those kids prepared to be able to go out and face the world and be able to work and provide and be a taxpayer in the city of Bastrop. Also just to learn and take those skills and be able to put them out to the world. But we want you to be able to come back into our community and give back and be involved and put into it, because, Bastrop is like I said, it's growing. Everyone knows it's growing. And with that, it's a lot of opportunities for us to change the direction of the community and really, the region itself. Yeah. Does that help?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, your question broke my brain a little bit, since it's at, regional level. We have 200 cities, I think, in the Capcog region. So in terms of who gets left behind in population growth, we have, aging populations, we have veterans, we have certain families, lower income folks that have to commute long ways to work. There's a lot of people that can get left behind, but I think the cities across the region are doing a great job at, making sure that that doesn't happen or mitigating the effects of that.
Yes.
And I think, one of the things that, we're doing in Austin is trying to learn, right, from what was happening when we were having these affordability pressures, some of these housing shortages, and making sure that our new plans, and because there's a lot of things that are happening in Austin, right? So we're going to be having, the I-35 reconstruction. We're going to be having our light rail construction going on. We know through history and through analysis that lots of those places that undergo this new transit-oriented development can sometimes, also bring displacement to surrounding areas and continue to displace communities. And so as we're building these projects or getting prepared to build those projects, we're really starting to remember our history and remember what happened the last time and what we've seen in other cities, and really start to put plans in place that are really focused on prioritizing the needs of the most vulnerable and making sure that we're putting in those guardrails that we did not do in the past so that we don't have to send everyone away. And then we're also making sure that just because our child population, it hasn't been growing as much, that we continue to provide the services for those families so that they don't see the city as a place where they can't raise a family, right? So that we continue to provide health care and access to child care. And then, we have as well a growing aging population. Austin is not a very affordable place to live, but it's relatively affordable when you've been in your home for over 20 years and you have, those lower interest rates that you were able to maximize during the pandemic. And so for a lot of our older populations, they're able to stay in place and age in their homes. And so we need to make sure that we're looking at things and considering things like what is the social connectivity of those households, as we heard in the earlier panel, making sure that that they maintain those social connections, but also that their homes are the kinds of places that are safe for them to be able to live in for their aging years. Over 1/3 of all of Austin's households are single-member households. Many of those households, you may be thinking, oh yes, of course, they're those early career people that are moving and getting their own household. That is some of it, but the other part is also the aging population, especially aging males who are aging in their own homes alone. And so really making sure that we're looking at how can we keep those communities connected, and also making sure that their homes are built in a way that they're able to stay in place.
That's great. And I just have a quick thing that I want to throw in. And you're all talking about growth, and I'm wondering, are there places in your areas that are declining? And you'd kind of indicated that there were. So if you could elaborate on that, and are there any plans for those places?
Yeah, so a few of our counties have been experiencing, I wouldn't say not yet quite declining, but very, very low growth rates, or maybe, their population has been steady for a while now. One of those that comes to mind is Fayette County. Fayette sits, I'd say almost between Austin and Houston, very rural. I believe the population's 24,000, 25,000 folks in the entire county. And, I think from between the 2010 and 2020 census, they did experience a slight decline in population, although they would say there's an undercount, which, I know the Texas Census Institute is working on, and they're here. So hopefully we can get more accurate numbers for 2030. And then we have some other counties where the population has been studying. I'd say, so we have Fayette, Lee County, and then also Llano and Blanco. Llano and Blanco did experience increases during the pandemic and shortly after, but those have been steadying out. And I'd say in terms of, I think the latter part of your question was interesting. How are they preparing, or, what are they doing about their growth rates? I think some of them are interested in growing, and some of them aren't as interested in growing. They like the status quo. They like, what's been going on in their communities. Those that are interested in growing, they work with us sometimes, or they work with other agencies to, bring jobs into the areas, bring new economic development projects. And we'll see, the hot topic of data centers comes up a lot. Not so much in our western counties, but more so in our 5-county urban MSA, and then also more eastern. But I think it's really up to the community, whether or not they want to grow. And that's not even just, on the county basis, it's at the city level as well.
So, well, Bastrop is growing. So, but to her point, the way I look at things again is with us being the neighboring larger city or community from those who are east of us, like in Lee County, Fayette County, south of us, cities, small cities, Weimar, Schulenburg, LaGrange, Giddings, right, Caldwell, and Caldwell County. To her point of their population might be decreasing. Well, that's because there's not a lot of opportunity for those communities to really keep up with this economy. So they're having to move into other places that have more higher paying jobs. And so in our community, to me, it's good that we not only as a person, you serve and help the people out, but when you're in this capacity, you serve and help your neighbors out as well. And so if we're able to have those higher paying jobs, those resources that work for those communities, it's easy for those people to come from their neighborhoods or their communities into Bastrop to work because it's what works for them. But if we don't have those opportunities in Bastrop and they have to drive an additional 30 miles to Austin, which is going to be another hour, then I'm not going to do it because it doesn't make any sense, right? I don't make any money. I'm spending more money driving and commuting just to say I have a good paying job and I can't go home and spend any money. And so it's important that we be able to provide those jobs and those resources for those communities, to be the big brother, to be the big sister, right? To be the steward of our region. We have to look at things in a regional capacity in Bastrop because it's so many smaller areas that could really use and benefit the things that we have. Again, Austin is great, but that extra 25 miles in the traffic that's on the highway makes a huge impact to what you want to do as far as commuting. Some people can do it. I know they can because I get up and I'm on the road at like 4:45, 5 o'clock in the morning coming into my job. And you can just see cars and cars and cars and cars coming from the east heading this way. And I know they're all not going to the airport. So they're coming up here for work, But sometimes I know people would rather be able to have something a little bit closer. And if you are having to commute and your job is good, then you're going to leave those rural areas and come up here. It may not be something that you want, but, the dollar is going to dictate at times. And so we want to be able to give people that option as they continue to raise their families or go through this world and figure out what they're trying to do.
Well, and I already touched a little bit about, two specific communities that have not been growing. And we really were able, to uncover that finding by disaggregating our data and making sure that we're looking to see, are all communities thriving, right? So because of Austin's really strong growth in the last few decades, we've seen real gains in employment. We have more jobs. We have, even though our job growth rate started to slow down, we still had, the lowest unemployment in the state. We have, higher incomes. We have, one of the most educated workforces in the country. But we need to make sure that every community is actually benefiting from that. And so that's what we do at the Demographics and Data Division, is making sure to disaggregate that information to see, is everyone benefiting from this growth? And what we're seeing is that in a lot of ways, not everyone is benefiting, right? And so specifically, we're not seeing growth among Hispanic and African American children, even though Asian population children, white population children are growing and continue to grow in the city of Austin. Same with their families, right? Those families are growing, but African American families and Hispanic families are not. And a lot of that is tied to just historical disparities in income and in educational attainment. And of course, there's lots of, I'm going to quote Dr. Steve Murdoch, our first state demographer, in saying there are, historical and systemic reasons for for those disparities, right? But many of those remain, even in a place like Austin, where we continue to see higher educational attainment, greater work, incomes. And so we continue to look at that. And because if we don't, it actually does start to affect our population growth. And that's what we're seeing in Austin now. Austin is really, Austin's growth is really tied to growth of both people coming to the area looking for jobs in terms of domestic migration, which in the last couple of years has been at a record all-time low. And it also depends on international migration, and really our, innovation and our diversity are very tightly linked. And so if we can make sure that we continue to attract diverse people to our area, continue to be able to maintain that diversity within our city and help our families stay in place, then it is a recipe for population growth. And right now we're seeing, lower tax revenues than we have seen historically, and a lot of that, of course, is tied to population growth. So at the city, we're working to try to make sure that we can, continue to remedy some of those disparities, because we know that it'll be tied to our population growth in the future as well.
Great. I think at this point we'll open it up to Q&A. We've got one over.
I got it. Anybody have some questions for our panelists from around Central Texas? Anybody lives in the area and has a question? Go ahead.
Wonderful panel, thank you. This question for the mayor. Congratulations on your recent election, by the way. Back in 2011, there was those horrible fires that took down about 1,500 to 1,600 housing units. Was that within the city of Bastrop? And is that housing stock come back at all, or?
So most of it was on the outskirts of the city limits, but not far within like a mile or two of the city limits itself. And so because it was such a rural area, it did impact houses, but a lot of those people, through grants and funding, FEMA, and whatever agencies helped them, they were able to rebuild in those areas. And as far as housing, like, it has not stopped or slowed down at Bastrop. We're building like crazy down there.
Thank you. Another question? Anyone? Yes.
Mayor, so I live in Bastrop. I live right outside the city limits of Bastrop, so I can't vote for you, but I'm sure I would if I did. To me, there's no, but my whole life, of course, is in Bastrop. I spend everything do there, except when I commute to your city to work every day. But there's no place where the change going on in Bastrop is more evident than HEB. So, just in this short period of time, going to HEB over the last few years, one day I was in there, I guess about a couple of years ago, and I realized this isn't Bastrop anymore. The people here are so different. These are not the same people that I shopped with just a couple of years ago. So many young families, so many people who don't look like Bastrop looked a couple of years ago. Hearing different languages, that aren't English or Spanish is being spoken in the aisles. So to me, that's very exciting and, and refreshing. But I'm wondering what the city is doing, or if the city is having to do anything to deal with the opportunities that come from that, as well as maybe some of the challenges that people that aren't that comfortable with that change occurring so fast in a town like Bastrop.
Well, HEB is going HEB, right? We can't, as much as we would like to say, put another one right here, it doesn't work for them that way, right? They're going to do their thing. But it's just providing other opportunities. People are going to come in and buy up land. And when they buy up land, if you're a developer, you're going to come talk with our planning department, or you're going to talk with the EDC, hopefully, right? And so we can see what you're planning on doing. And really just try to navigate in how we're going to make it work for the different people in the community. Like, we recently just got a Sprouts there, right? So that helps offset just a little bit with the grocery market. Just having different varieties of food that come in with our development that comes in. We have Sendero that has, they're building a Texas Roadhouse. Chewy's just opened up. Jersey Mike's, having those opportunities, it adds different variety for food options. But really just us as the council and also working with the county commissioners, because biggest thing is what happens in Bastrop County affects the city, and what we do in the city affects the county. Like that's something I'll die on that hill, because that is a fact, because everyone that lives in the county and surrounding areas comes into the city for a lot of the resources. And so it's important that we take in mind, we listen to people like Charles here, and know that we have a different variety of people. We present opportunities to where the community can get together and enjoy themselves. So we put on a lot of community events. We have something that goes on every Friday on Main Street. All of these different things allow us to mix amongst the community and see. Our council is really active. I for sure make sure that, because I'm like everywhere. I try to be as many events as I can, more so just to support the community. But when we're out there and about, we're able to mingle and see what we have and hear what the people are. We do a lot of community engagement on social media, right? So that gives us an idea of what we're going to do. And so when developers come in and they sit at the table, we let them know, hey, this is what we got going on in our community. This is who we are. This is who we're proud to be, and this is who we're going to remain. We want to preserve our historic value, our aspect. We want 10, 20 years from now, we want people to still be like, man, Bastrop is able to hold on to their traditions. We did a lot to protect our downtown corridor. Bastrop proper, we call it 1832 now. And the reason it's that, because that's when Bastrop was established. So just so you know, in 6 years, we're going to be celebrating 200 years of existence. All right, so y'all get ready for that. But you're right. You know, we have a variety of people coming in, being involved in the schools, with the teachers, just all the larger people at play, being able to talk and communicate so we understand what we have that's coming into the community and changing. Then that way, when we start, as we're building for the future, we make sure we touch those areas and to keep people connected. Because at the end of the day, we are Bastrop, and we're a community. We look out for each other, we care for each other, and we're going to express that and give that out to those who are coming in.
Thank you. Yes.
So my question is to all three panelists. Now, I have been hearing about affordable housing. Thanks, Mayor. You talked about attainable housing. That really struck me. And yeah, now I realize that attainable housing drove the growth around suburbs, right? Now, I'm wondering, how do you see the current trends and how you forecast future trends on house type choices and house location choices because of the congestion? Now, you know, yes, Austin grew quite a bit over a decade, but as a result, there are huge congestion, traffic-related issues, and I'm wondering how they're going to impact house location choices and house type choices.
Sure. You know, so one of the reasons that housing became so unaffordable in Austin was because we don't have a whole lot of land to build housing. Like, a lot of the land is already developed. And so we have, you know, some infill projects that we can do. And there's some areas of the city that still have, you know, land that can be developed into housing. But what we build on there is what really matters, right? What that looks like. Because we could build, you know, the big lots that are in Bastrop, and then we're only building for a couple hundred people, right? Or we could build, you know, different types of housing that are attainable to different types of folks, right? And so I think, you know, that was part of what was happening in Austin. It was that you know, we weren't developing, you know, something that was available or attainable for everyone. We're starting to look more into that, right? Just recently, our city council passed, you know, ordinances to make sure that they could develop more diverse types of housing. And so now single family lots, you know, don't have to develop just one unit. You can have up to 3 units on those lots, right? There's folks that look at that in different ways, right? Because, what we know is that building more housing units is not always enough, right? We can always have more housing units, but if they're very expensive units, then we're still, leaving lots of people behind without limited options, or with very limited options. And so making sure that there are some guardrails in place that, are able to, determine some level of affordability is always going to be helpful. But right now, how we're projecting where we think growth will happen in Austin, we did this work on small area forecasts with 12 different departments in the city. We brought in our subject matter experts, and we asked them, based on what you know in terms of new projects, transportation development, like where are the new developments happening? And a lot of what we're seeing, if we continue to do what we see in place today, is a lot of growth is moving farther and farther east towards the edges of the city, but sometimes altogether outside of the city. What we don't know yet, and we didn't forecast there, is what kind of development. And that's going to make a big difference, right? Because that could mean that, they're big lots and it's going to be available for just a limited number of people, or it could be, some other project that doesn't have to be, 200 plus unit multifamily development, but it could be something in between, what is often called that missing middle housing, right? Where you can have duplexes, quadplexes, row homes, different types of development. And I think that that's what the city's really doing right now, and wherever development is possible, is making sure that we're trying to offer different types of development. Of course, there's lots of restrictions, right? Not only do we have limitations from our code, but we also have restrictions from the state. We can't require affordable development if the city doesn't own the land. And so a lot of it falls on the consciences of our developers, to really, build something that's going to be good for the community.
As a council of governments, we don't have, we don't have much of a say or much power to tell communities where to put housing or if they need housing or not. But we do connect communities with resources, and then we also conduct research. So something that we did in 2023, 2024 was for the 10-county region, we conducted a jobs and housing balance analysis. So we looked at where do people live in the region, where do they work. We specifically looked at moderate income workers to see, how far are people commuting. And we selected, I think it was, the top 40 census tracts in the 10-county region that had folks commuting in for work. And then, we did a brief analysis of that and what that means. And we had some UT graduate students dive into 2 of those communities. So we had them look at Marble Falls, and we had them look at an area of Southeast Austin that has a lot of offices. And we had them dig into why are there a lot of people commuting into these regions, and how can those communities either build more housing, or how can they make housing more affordable in their communities. But it is different by each community.
Well, I think that that kind of we're towards the end of our timeline. Please join me in thanking our panelists and Dr. Joyner. Thank you for sharing your lived experience in your roles, trying to looking at the multi-level challenges across the region, and for the work that you do in your perspective, as public servants, because that's what you are. So thank you for that. Thank you, Dr. Joyner, for moderating. All right, well, that concludes our plenary panel for noon, and we're going to transition into our afternoon sessions. And thank you, everyone.